I need to be qualified to speak on character, and which I'm not. Who is really qualified to lead us into a conversation on character? But we're going to approach it today and set you up for a deeper time with a bit more space to process this content when it comes to character. For me, something that's been hitting me lately, it's just fascinating to watch kids grow up. I've got three of them, and you can start to see some of the quantum leaps in their development in different ways than you do with adults. And you also start to see the emergence of their character. So not just their growth physically, but also in who they are. And I had a recent example that just really grabbed my attention. We are in a rental house. We have been here a year. We're about to move into a more permanent space, but it's been a great place. I've got a fantastic landlord, and he cares about his house and his property. And I've owned a house before, so I try to be a good steward of renting from him. But we're about to leave. And in the last couple of weeks, there's been this woman who's been walking around our neighborhood. And in the morning time, she typically walks by our lawn with her two small dogs. And we've discovered that our lawn, the side with no windows where you can't see, is her preferred spot for taking her dog's potty. Now, I don't usually see her. I'm usually down here working, but my kids do because they take our dog out every day and it's summer. And so they play, get her to run around, and they see this woman. And, normally I might say something, but we're about to move out. We've got a lot of things happening, and I just don't have the mental energy to say, you know what, maybe don't take your dog potty on my lawn. I don't appreciate that. But it really bothers my kids, especially my oldest, my 10-year-old son. So a couple weeks ago, the two younger ones just run in the house and they said, Daddy, 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 do you know what just happened? I'm thinking, what happened? And then my oldest walks in, Josiah. I said, what happened, Josiah? And he said, well, that lady came back with her dogs and they were about to pee on the lawn. So my son went up to the fence and said, excuse me, ma'am. I don't appreciate having your dogs pee and poop, go potty on my lawn. Could you please not do that again? And of course she stopped, and she didn't come back. I've seen her sneak a couple times, but Josiah called her out, and I kind of laughed. I thought, wow. His response, watching his character develop real time, gave me a little bit of a glimpse into the person he is and the man he is becoming. It also challenged me to say, okay, why was I not the one who was a little bit more assertive there as well? But it was just fascinating to watch that in kids. When we think about the importance of character and how it emerges, when it comes to character and leaders, today, there's a lot of talk about leaders and leadership, what we want leaders to be. You hear about it, you read about it. When you have conversations and talk to people, you quickly get a sense of we have high demands and expectations for leaders, and there's a lot of importance and weight put on leaders today. I recently read a job description. I've always been fascinated with job descriptions. I recently read a job description for a very senior leader role in a high stakes position with a lot riding on this role. A lot of impact, meaningful impact on people. And when I read the role, as best as I could count, I think there were 15 qualifications, which was a lot. So you kind of look at some job descriptions and you think, wow, could anybody actually fulfill this? But this one had 15 pretty weighty characteristics they were looking for. And what struck me as I read a little bit deeper, I realized only one of those was actually related to leader competence, or the ability to get the stuff of the job done, execute on the role. The rest were, as far as I can tell, character descriptions. And what really grabbed my attention was that they're looking for a type of person, not just a set of skills. And I started thinking about the conversations I have with people just in the work I do or in normal life. And when the topic of leaders comes up, you hear people talk about what they want in a leader or the type of leader they're looking for. And often it is interesting when you start to pay attention, people are often talking about a type of person, the character of the person they want, not just the competence. And competence is absolutely crucial. Do not get me wrong. We've talked about that in our sessions. We have a whole assessment tool around leader competence. Competence is crucial, but character is undoubtedly foundational. I had a leader about a decade ago. I was doing a research project and interviewed him for it on leaders. And he said something. He said, who you are is more important than what you do. who you are is more important than what you do. I'm still wrestling with that today. I believe it, but I don't know if I fully believe it, because I do believe that the what you do, the actual stuff, your actions do matter. And I don't think he was dismissing that, but I still wrestle with that today. But what I do know, and what I do resonate with that statement, is that character is often more about who you are, while competence is more about who you do, what you do. But certainly the things you do are influenced by who you are. Who you are influences what you do. If you've been with us in the WiLD community for a length of time, you know that we are pretty specific about language and words, and the word leader is a neutral term, or to lead. And it's not until we put our own values on it, we qualify what that is, that we can talk about a good leader, a bad leader, good character, bad character. And it's part of the reason that this whole series, as Claire noted earlier, is anchored in character. We talk about courageous and sacrificial, and last week talking about faith, or the invisible things, the deeper assumptions we make, and next week getting into sacrifice and then community. Is our hope is to be both rooted in a type of leader that we want to, and aspire to be, but also the type of leader we're working to develop. But when I started looking into character for this session, there is a lot written on character. The dictionary definition was overwhelming. The number of books, articles, talks about character or something related to it are prolific. There's one definition I found. If I could, I'm going to define character simply. I'm going to share one big idea, and I'm going to give you two questions that I hope can seed and spark conversation in this next breakout group. This is one of the most concise descriptions I found. Character is this: one of the attributes or features that make up and distinguish an individual. A character or feature that makes up or distinguishes an individual. And it contrasted to being in character, or in accord with a person's usual qualities and traits. Behaving in character contrasted with behaving out of character, something that's not in accord with a person's usual qualities or traits. And I like that, because when I think often you think of good character, the word integrity gets brought up. Doing the right thing, regardless of what others may think or what the consequences. Or we think of bad character, maybe something such as manipulating others for your own gain, or just for your own ego needs. However you qualify good or bad character, character tells us something about who you are, and maybe more so, who you are consistently. Character is different than personality, those heritable traits, genetic stuff. And we've talked about that a number of sessions. You can find some more things on our YouTube from the WiLD conversation about are leaders born or made, and the influence of personality. So that's important. But unlike genetics or personality, which are pretty stable, character can change for better or worse. Character is about who we are, but also who we are becoming. Some of you know that Dr. McKenna is writing a book, and he's got a big section on it around character, and I've had the chance to read through it. And one of the things that grabbed me, I thought this described it well, the elusive nature of character. And he wrote this: we know character when we see it. We often have our difficulty articulating what we are actually seeing. We know it when we see it, but we often have difficulty articulating what we're actually seeing. So here's my big idea, and then I'm going to share two questions. The big idea is this: character is ultimately about who you are. Character is ultimately about who you are, and as a leader, who you are influences what you do. So here's my first question: who are you? Or in some cases, it might be, who do people say you are? A word that I think of when it comes to characters is this idea of identity. I had a leader we're working with who recently described the leaders in his influence and in his broader industry. And he said that right now that his industry is experiencing an existential crisis for leaders, which is why this topic is so important to me today. Because he started to describe the leaders he's working with who do not know who they are, and because they do not have a strong anchoring, when the storms and winds of change, which happen always, and maybe we've been more attuned to in the last year and a half, come, those leaders are not anchored in who they are. And so their inability to make decisions or make effective decisions or engage effectively is limited. This is what another leader we work with described as deep-seated leader development, which is often anchored in character. Over the last year, and especially the last few months, I've had a growing realization that no matter what I'm doing with a leader, whether it's a systematic program, a team project, a coaching, whatever we're doing, the structure of what we're doing with a client, maybe the most important thing that I'm providing is whatever key leader we're supporting, being able to stand with them in order to help them stand well and stand firm among the myriad of things that are happening. And that, well, certainly what they do matters, how they show up and who they are and who they're choosing to be matters as much, if in some cases not more, than the things that they actually do. Is standing well. And certainly part of that means for our sake and also for the sake of others, because other people matter and can speak into this. Bringing other people's perspectives on our character can be dangerous, but it also can be very helpful. So we have to be careful how we listen to those voices. But a recent example for me, many of you have used our WiLD profile. It's the first assessment tool in our system of assessments. And in the WiLD profile, if you've seen it, there's actually a character measure. There's two parts to it, a character presence, which is really about a summary of your character strengths, and then a character impact, which is a summary of how others are likely to receive or be impacted by your character, good or bad. And so we always encourage leaders, when you've completed one of these tools, it's a deep reflective moment, you have to bring somebody else in and give you perspective and feedback. And so I shared it with my wife a couple of years ago. I shared it throughout my WiLD profile. And I said, hey, I went through this. I had some interesting insights. I'd love to have you read it and see if you see the same things or not. And there was this self-rating on character. And I'll never forget having her read through, and she goes something along the lines of, so tell me about, this is out of 10, right? Scores out of 10. Okay. Tell me about these 8s and 9s on patience and humility. Was that really a 9 on patience? And I'm going, yeah, maybe a 6, 3, 4. But it's important to have people's impact on our character and in who we are. But whether it's what we know or others' impact, the increasing realization for me is the importance. I spend, and I know the leaders I work with, spend so much time thinking about what I should do. And maybe we don't spend enough time. I want to spend more time thinking about not just what I should do on my checklist, but who am I, continuing to pay attention to who am I and who am I becoming and how am I being with others for their sake, and certainly my own as well. And really the formation of identity as leaders is both foundational and it's ongoing. That question of who am I, as I define myself, as you define yourself, and in relation to others, shows up in all the stuff that you do. So who are you? Who am I? My second question is this: who are you becoming? And it's my conviction and experience, and there's a lot of research to suggest as well, that character is often shaped out of the hard things. I bumped into a neighbor yesterday on a walk, and she happened to share how her daughter is moving back home. They're excited. She's moving back to town. She bought a house. It was built in 1900, 1900. So we said, what's the house like? And my neighbor paused and she said, it's got character. And my experience is that when somebody says a building or a piece of furniture has character, they usually mean that there's something flawed about it. It's not perfect. It's not glossy. There's things that likely need to be fixed, but there's something about it that through those flaws, those imperfections, the experience it's lived through, that make it valuable, that give it something to offer. I've got a leader who I work with who recently said, I'm having a character day. And what he was meaning was that and I appreciated his perspective. He was having a day that was changing, that had the potential. It was challenging, but had the potential to change him for the positive. So what experiences are shaping your character or who you are becoming? What's happening right now, or what's happened? Or what are you about to step into? Let me give you a few of mine. And I know everyone has their own list. I'll just rattle off a few. For me, over my life, Getting married and realizing that I was really selfish. That developed my character. Becoming a dad and realizing that I was even more selfish than I realized. Having two kids, two more kids, and realizing and getting the selfishness slowly pressed out of me. Working 4 jobs to make end meet as a newly married guy with a kid on the way, the sudden death of one of my best friends, a nervous breakdown that left me with 2 years of panic attacks, lots of traumatic family and personal experiences that I'm not going to share with you on this call, earning my PhD with 2 kids and a full-time job, completing my Eagle Scout after appealing it and going through a long process. I may be the only Eagle Scout you ever known who's had to appeal their Eagle Scout. There's a whole character lesson there. Living in a hotel with and going between house to house while my family was flooded out of our house for 8 months with a dog, a cat, a brother-in-law, and 3 kids, including a newborn. I could go on, and I know you have your own list too of high moments and triumphs, as well as challenges that have formed who you are and who you're becoming. Next week, when we get into sacrifice and sacrificial leadership, we'll explore what we think is a critical part of character, but it's a type of character that might not get us a promotion or sell a book. And along with books, there's another quote from Rob's book on character that just grabbed me this week. I'm going to read this. He wrote, "If we buy into the assumption that we're only defined by how high we go, we miss the reality that our character is also shaped by how low we've been." Those moments where we have hardship, where we need to persevere, they often are the cauldron that produces character. And character is as much about our potential as it is about our pathology, as much in our beauty as it is in our brokenness. And so I hope as you get into this conversation to think about this. Who are you and who are you becoming? And what is the impact of that on you and those people who are around you? One of the comments that Josh, you put in the chat here, I just grabbed me so many things, but you said, "I realized that I don't know how I am perceived as a leader." And I appreciate that honesty because I believe that question about who am I is so important and to approach and so fundamental to leading. It's why we built an entire suite of 10 assessments that unpacks this question and turns into action. But I want to leave you with an experiment for this week, and it relates directly to your comment there, is to find 3 people who you know and trust and love you, and simply ask them to describe who they believe that you are. Ask them to describe who they believe that you are. And you'll likely be surprised, encouraged, hopefully challenged, and see some ways that your character is being seen and shown and demonstrated and impacting other people. I hope you can stick around with us for this next hour. We're going to dive into the people investment plan, one of my favorite tools, talking specifically about how do we get intentional about investing in the growth and development of other people. And if that's a problem you're trying to solve, we have some really specific ways that we think can help you get more intentional about it. We hope to see you. If you've got your WiLD toolkit, bring it. And if you don't, but you still want to stick around, please do that too, to get some insights and ideas for how to invest more intentionally in others as part of the outpouring of your character. Thanks for joining us.